The NFL draft just concluded this weekend.
draft.
Something we have been
What a
talking
draft.
about for months now. I mean, we've really been talking about these players since multiple college seasons ago, but every
Put the
single
draft
week
in hold.
of this past season and then all of the weeks leading up to the draft, we gave our quarterback rankings, wide receiver rankings, where we thought at least players would go, full mock draft. And now we're here. We have the results. And one thing was not like the others. That one thing was Shedeur Sanders, Mel Kiper's #1 overall prospect.
Oh my gosh.
His guy he thought should go #1, going in the 5th round of the Cleveland Browns at 144th overall after they had already selected a quarterback in the 3rd round. So, one thing I want to start with. We were getting on Mike hard all offseason.
I don't know if we would have said that.
No, I don't
think I was getting on Mike hard.
No, you probably getting on.
I think Tyler's getting hard for Mike.
If I had
Whoa.
a chance to redo that saying, I'd probably phrase it slightly differently. But Mike was very consistent in his take that Shedeur was not as good as everyone was projecting, that the off-the-field stuff, him being overly boisterous, kind of tanking interviews, not participating in the combine, not playing the Senior Bowl, doing his own little side event during that, all this would accumulate in NFL GM saying, you know what, we're good without you. You didn't have him in your top 10 quarterback list. You said you didn't think he'd be drafted as a top 5 quarterback. You were correct. And he ended up falling the 5th round. So I want to talk about Shedeur in this episode. We're going to recap who won the draft in the next one. But Mike, when you saw what transpired, and then not only that, but kind of the reaction from media and how that was different from teams, where teams were this wasn't necessarily surprising, but the media thought this was the most surprising thing ever.
Yeah, they thought it was like Armageddon.
Yeah.
Like
How
pretty
are you-
much like Hiroshima.
How are
was
you
dropped.
sitting back watching this? Because you called it. We don't say this often, but you called it.
I mean, I was definitely, sitting back with a little smile on my face. I'm going to be brutally honest
Professional
with you.
hater.
Professional hater. But here's the one thing that I'm
Biggest
going to get out of the way. I do not enjoy the whole pranking of Shedeur, the whole prank phone call. I hate that. And I hate doing it to all of these other like rookies and guys who are literally waiting on what should be the greatest day of their entire life. And then you sitting on your couch doing nothing or literally just being a loser, calls these guys and like dangles a carrot in front of their face. Like, you're an asshole, man. Don't do that. That's terrible.
I mean, it's typical Falcons behavior. I'm just going to say it's the worst franchise.
I mean, this has
NFL.
also been happening for years, and it happened to like multiple other players. The trap. Tyler Warren got called by 2.
No, that's what I'm
different
saying.
people
I know.
before his
I don't
draft.
like it for any
If
of them.
Shedeur got picked at 5, Michael would have said, I love that kid. He's my best friend.
Yeah, but he wasn't.
Yeah,
But he wasn't. So you know what? I don't kick dead dogs. I ain't like that.
Dogs.
But here's the thing. Here's what I saw, and here's what I think teams concluded to as an organization is that Shedeur Sanders was the perfect storm of getting all the media hype while he was in college with his dad as an NFL superstar, Deion Sanders, coaching, recruiting unbelievably well, making Colorado, literally flipping that program into a winning program from being nothing. They were dust.
One win, yeah.
Literal dust. And, this guy comes in. Shedeur Sanders is a good enough player to do well in a really bad conference, in my opinion. And I think he did that exactly well. And so it played into the media storm that they can kind of ride that coattail. In reality, I think he had a way overinflated ego. And I think that was seen in all of these interviews, all the quotes that were coming out from assistant head coaches, which is now confirmed to be the Giants. At the end of the day, NFL organizations are trying to run a business and they're trying to win Super Bowls and they're trying to be progressive and profitable. And the thing that they don't need is these off the field antics. They don't need people that are going to bring all of the attention to themselves. And, a prime example of that is Shedeur Sanders had an entire production team for his freaking draft day. And after day 1, if it's not there, give it up. You don't need these people following you around. People don't want that. Like, organizations want a guy who's going to check into a building, suit on, head down, learn a playbook, say, this is what I need to do to win, to do business. And this guy doesn't have that. He has the only thing that's within his nature is to say, I'm Shedeur Sanders. I have the ability to be the best in the NFL. Never played a snap in the NFL, but he still thinks that. He
hasn't played one snap yet.
never played a snap in the
Still,
NFL.
to this day, not one snap in the NFL.
He's never seen his
days after
speed.
the
And he
draft.
said
But
he's
he
the best
acts,
player.
but he acts like he has, the talent to be Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. He doesn't. And maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but he hasn't shown it.
He does.
Hasn't proved
Maybe
it.
He does, man.
And no, you can't have that ego when you're going into a league, especially with these interviews with the teams beforehand. This is going to be your future career. Why are you taking on certain teams? Be humble.
The intentional tanking of interviews was definitely an interesting choice.
It's
And
horrible.
I have a lot of thoughts on this, but Mario, I want to hear yours first because you had Shedeur as your number 1 quarterback.
Yes.
Numero
So
uno.
I'm sure you have plenty of thoughts on this, not only just on Shedeur, but your team and the Saints taking Tyler Shove before
I mean,
Shedeur.
let's not make this a Saints
All right,
conversation.
go ahead. Go
Go
ahead.
Saints conversation.
No, this was extremely shocking that he fell to the 5th round. I was still like a little surprised that he fell out of the 1st round. Everyone thought if the Saints passed at 9, Steelers were going to take him at 21. Apparently, like they're saying Mike Tomlin kind of like Shedeur.
Thank the Lord.
So when he got passed at 21, I was like, wow, okay, yeah, he's not going in the 1st round. I thought for sure day 2 he'd be off the board. When he didn't go day 2, that's when I was like, whoa, this is insane.
This is
because
real.
say what you want about Shedeur, and I'm gonna keep my bias aside here and just like objectively, like I do agree with Mike in the sense of, like especially the interviews or whatever that you're doing with NFL teams and him
crazy.
Acting out and stuff like that is going to be a big distraction and deterring for a lot of teams. Like whether you're going to go to this team or not, or whether you want to be there, like you still have to have some sort of professionalism, like, and just being like acting how you want just shows immaturity. And like NFL, especially quarterback, like you got to be a mature person, a leader, a professional. But that aside, like the talent itself from Shedeur, I was like, he's still, in my opinion, the 2nd most talented quarterback in this class. So him falling that far was just like, I couldn't conceive. My brain can't process that. Still can't. I mean, it's shocking. I understand the point of like, he brings a lot of attention, a lot of distraction. If teams don't see him as a starter and he's going to sit as a backup, it's just going to be a lot of,
Noise.
Media every week, when is Shedeur going to start? And maybe some teams didn't want to deal with that. Also, we heard that some NFL owners told their GM, take him off your board. He's not available to be drafted to this organization. Like, it's not an option.
That's absurd, yeah.
So it's just a crazy story. I'm shocked. I do think he'll end up being the quarterback at some point this coming season for Cleveland. But it's just weird that they drafted Gabriel. Because, you drafted 2 rookies.
In the 3rd
I love
round.
it.
Yeah.
I think that's also a big distinction a lot of people are kind of forgetting, and I want to talk about in a second, but they drafted Shedeur in the 5th round.
Yeah.
Mid day 3.
Yeah.
A third round draft choice at quarterback is a lot different than a 5th round draft choice. Basically, there's no starters day 3.
Yeah.
Ever. And day 2, it's like sometimes starters. And it's very, very rare, unless you see a lot of injuries, that you'll see a day 3 starter in their first season at quarterback.
Yeah.
Very, very rare. Ryan, what do you see? What do you think when you saw this unfolding?
This is kind of frustrating for me because, like, I'm not a Shedeur guy at all. I didn't think he was going to be, like, anything amazing. But we know when we were doing the draft and we said when there's best fit and then there's just best of it, like the most talented player. I understand you might not have the best fit, but Shedeur is better than, what did he go, 140?
144.
He's better than at least 80 of those players. Like, not even biased lead for most of the world. You know what I mean? So, like,
But I don't think it's a talent issue.
No, I think maybe it's off the field, but,
agree.
like, that's why I think the Browns got set on Dylan Gabriel. Like, we want to try this guy, not Shedeur. But then they were smart enough to understand, like, hey, we have nothing.
Yeah.
Just like half the teams in the league do have, like, nothing.
Yeah.
And we're like, why not just take Shedeur? He showed talent in college.
Yeah.
So, like, I think the Browns actually got extremely fortunate because they have nothing, and now they have unlimited ammo to try.
And they're paying him
with what they have.
$0.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're
On a
doing the
4-year
cheapest
rookie
amount
deal.
possible, even with Gabriel. So, like, I think
They got a gift.
I think it's a good thing for the Browns, weird thing for Shedeur, but again, it's kind of like for Shedeur, what we always said, he just has to show it. I mean, there was nothing going to change. Even if he got drafted high, he still was going to have to show it. So, like, now we just literally, like you said, hopefully he plays maybe
Well,
sometime.
maybe he gets the opportunity. Maybe he doesn't. At this
Depends
point.
on Dylan Gabriel, yeah.
I think a lot of the narrative around what happened is extremely misleading. And I think the 5th round selection is almost irrelevant because there were no quarterbacks taken after the 3rd round before Shedeur.
Yeah.
So I think that's semi-relevant because basically what you've heard forever is that if you're getting a starter, it's going to be in the first round, maybe very early second round. If you're getting someone who might be a starter in the next year or two, you're going to take him in the second or third round, and anyone after that is just a backup.
Yeah.
So you very rarely see quarterbacks in the fourth round, early fifth round. Then you'll see some shots being taken like sixth and seventh round for like true backups.
Put on the roster, try it out.
Shedeur on a lot of draft boards was between 2 and 3 for best quarterback. He was either Jackson Dart or Shedeur at 2 or 3. He got drafted as QB 6. So I get the slide is a lot for like the number of players taken, but for a quarterback to slide 3 to 6, I don't think is that insane. And I get that his situation is very unique, but I think it makes actual perfect sense based on everything else that's around him. Like, could the teams that selected other quarterbacks out of him throw Cam Ward and Jackson Dart out of the way, because I do think those two are actually better than Shedeur. Tyler Shaw for Louisville, early second round, maybe not great, maybe good, who knows? He's the tallest quarterback, tallest quarterback, one of the biggest arms. He has some things that Shedeur doesn't have that you could point to and say no off the field issues, tallest quarterback, one of the biggest arms. Who knows? Probably a bad choice. We'll see. Milroe at the end of the third.
I love that.
I mean, if that isn't the perfect fit for Seattle, I was obsessed with that pick. Yeah, I thought he was a better choice for Seattle than Shedeur, 100%. Regardless. I mean, he can sit behind Sam Darnold, learn how to throw for a couple years, come in like a Jordan Love-esque scenario in 3 years, maybe he knows how to throw, still runs a 4.45. Still, I mean, he is. If everything works out perfectly for all these quarterbacks, he probably has the highest upside. And you could kind of see that at moments in college. It's probably unlikely he realizes his highest upside, but big Lamar Jackson-esque type quarterback. Then the Dylan Gabriel thing, agreed. That one's weird. That was the only one that was like pretty weird, but he went to the same team. So at the end of the day, I don't think it really mattered. I think the thing that became clear, especially towards those late mock drafts, and I wish we would have recognized this, is that I think the media knew. And I think they had to hide it. And I was talking about this with Mike earlier. You couldn't be the media member to start mocking Shedeur out of the first round or two, because all of a sudden the focus shifts on you. It's a lot easier to push him from a top 3 to 9 pick on every mock draft that you've done for 3 months, and then randomly the last week, 4 days after your last mock, put him to 21. Everyone just had him at 21 on that last week. Knew. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, we had to pretend like we're surprised. Dude, they for sure heard from all of these teams, he's not getting selected in the top of this draft class. Maybe the Steelers take a flyer. Maybe some team trades up. But if he's after like the first couple picks of the second round, if he's not taken, and you heard people like Joel Klatt and Josh Pate say this today, they're like, we got multiple calls from people saying if he's not taken the first like 8 picks of the second round when the Saints were selecting, he's falling like mid-day 3. Yeah. No team is selecting a backup quarterback with this high of draft capital when you know they're not going to start. And so I think the media knew. I think they were trying to cover their tracks. The only person who wasn't was Mel Kiper, who decided to make the entire draft about Shedeur Sanders and talk about him.
Yeah, it's annoying.
24/7.
I mean,
every single pick taken. They're showing Shedeur highlights when Jackson Dart's selected. They're showing Shedeur highlights.
It was just waiting every pick.
No, it's 24/7 Shedeur. It's like they had a Shedeur highlight reel when Cam Ward got selected. We've known Cam Ward was going to be the number 1 pick for 2 months now.
Yeah.
And they still showed Shedeur highlights. Like, it was some weird obsession. Got a lot of backlash. But I don't think it should have been that surprising, and I actually think a lot of media members are pretending to be surprised. Because I think they didn't want the Stephen A. Smith type aggression that you saw today around making this a race thing about, his family. They don't want, loud quarterbacks coming in. They want people to shut up and do their job. Mm-hmm. Whether or not that's true, they didn't want that pointed at the analysts itself. They just wanted to like step back and be like, hey, it's not about me. It's the draft. I don't know do you guys feel like people knew about this? I 100% think.
I think organizations knew like 100% that they weren't drafting him, touching him, and they were like talking.
I mean, people were saying the Steelers liked him. We clearly didn't.
Yeah,
Mike Tomlin
ample amount of opportunity.
We chose Will Howard.
Outside looking in, people pre-draft were like, "Hey, is Mike Tomlin not the quarterback or not the coach to go get him here?"
Yeah.
He's dealt with personalities his entire career, literal head cases. Mm-hmm. Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, Martavis Bryant, like. Josh, like
Smith.
Literally everyone.
Any of them turned out. I mean,
Antonio Brown's one of the best.
Antonio Brown is fantastic.
But we don't need to talk about Steelers, superstars. But they clearly didn't like him.
No, obviously.
And I also think another thing that's kind of overrated here is the pool of teams that was actually in the play to select him.
Yeah, there weren't
10
Which-
teams
yeah.
max.
And I think it's less than that too. Okay, so like Titans needed a quarterback. They're at 1. They're gone.
They got it.
Giants, sure, but Giants is the interview that he
Yeah.
intentionally tanked. Where
With Brian
Gable gave him a playbook that they've now gone out and said he didn't read. Showed up to the interview extremely nonchalant, saying like he's gonna do his thing. Knew none of the answers to the plays, and that was what the quote came out saying. It was by far the worst interview I've ever been a part of. Like, this kid is entitled and does not care at all. That was from the Giants.
Yeah.
So the Giants were off the board.
Yeah.
So you could say Steelers, you could say Saints, you could say Seahawks, and you could say like Browns.
Yeah.
And
You could throw out like Raiders.
I mean the Raiders, it
little
seems,
bit.
But
didn't
they
even-
have Geno.
But, like,
Well,
but not
Shedor's
for
not
the-
coming into play
yeah.
for the most part.
I think it's those 4. I mean, the Raiders selected a quarterback at the very end with an extra compensatory pick at the end of the 6th. It's Cam Miller from North Dakota State. He's not playing. So they clearly weren't trying to go reach for any sort of quarterback in this draft. There was like 4 or 5 teams that were in the mix, and like half of them got their quarterback solutions figured out like within the first round and a
picks.
half. Yeah, so like I don't know. It was an interesting scenario for sure. And man, he's at the Browns. Yeah, because is there a worse spot to go for a quarterback?
No, I mean you're literally
Yeah.
quarterback 5
I mean, it's-
behind.
Historically, the worst organization
For
ever
quarterbacks.
For quarterbacks,
Yeah.
they've taken first round quarterbacks year after
Yeah.
year.
What has Shedeur
And
done
they
with
just
every
tanked.
team he's
Remember when they
been on?
drafted
Yeah.
Deshaun Kaiser?
I mean, Shedor's used to go into the worst team.
And then all he does is,
yeah.
With
makes them happy.
Daddy as
If I'd
coach.
be scared, I'd be scared for Cam Ward.
Why?
I mean, Tennessee's not a great place for quarterbacks.
He has the most like
Unfortunately, people do die.
he has the most on his plate.
Yeah.
Like he has the most to live
He has
up
to go in and be day one starter.
Yeah, he has to be
With
actually
a
good.
very untalented.
But the
Yeah,
leash is
I agree.
completely different.
yeah, no, 100%.
Like he has
but Shedor's gonna have. I mean, the Browns have
the
weapons.
shortest leash of all time.
But the Browns have weapons.
I think there's a
Like who? Like I mean, you have Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears are your 2 best offensive weapons. They're both your running backs.
Oh no, I mean we could. I don't think we need to get into a huge debate whether the actual worst team in the NFL and the Titans is that much worse than the second worst team in the NFL, which is the Browns. They're both absolute trash. No, I don't think anyone's gonna make the
terrible.
case that one team's that much better than the other. 1 versus 3 wins, and the 1 win was to tank to get Cam Ward at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the Browns have never been successful with quarterback.
No.
And they're not paying him any money, and they totally did select a quarterback 2 rounds above him. So I'd be really surprised. I mean, I'm sure the narrative is going to be for Shedeur to play, but I'd be really surprised if they don't give Dylan Gabriel a shot before Shedeur. And even then, Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett are both on that roster,
What?
and odds-on favorites to play before both of them, with Deshaun Watson rehabbing, potentially coming back next year when he's still under contract
Yeah,
for 2 more
Jesus.
years after that. And so, like, Deshaun's not playing at all this year, but in the future, they could look at, like, all right, we have Dylan Gabriel, Kenny Pickett for 2 years. Joe Flacco's a nice placeholder. And
I
then
think they're
Deshaun's-
trading Kenny Pickett. That's what I saw in NFL today.
He's so good.
Are they? I mean, he's still the odds-on favorite right now to start Week 1.
He's
So
the Super Bowl
God.
champion. He's tied the
Yeah,
winners.
Super Bowl champion Kenny Pickett. You know?
I feel is Kenny Pickett not the exact same quarterback as Shedeur Sanders? Forget the off-the-field stuff. Like on the
No,
field,
Shedor's got bigger hands.
dude, barely. I mean, they're the same quarterback. They're literally the same person.
I think one's a better passer. I
mean,
think
Kenny
Kenny's
Pickett was leading.
Kenny's got Kenny's got a little fight in him. He's got a little dog in him.
I don't know. This argument is irrelevant.
Kenny Pickett was QB1 in his draft
I-
class. I just want that. I think that's also why the Steelers didn't take him. Is because they felt it was almost identical. We picked Kenny Pickett at 21. We were drafting at 21. Do you take another undersized quarterback who put up a lot of yards in college?
Also, another thing I thought with the Steelers, if they get Shedeur, it's almost like there's no chance Aaron Rodgers signs. Aaron Rodgers ain't dealing
I
with
think
that
we already
shit.
signed Aaron Rodgers. I think it's just not announced.
But I'm saying, so that I think, but that's also like a part of it. Even as a backup plan, even if you did get Aaron Rodgers, because you're only getting him for a year, maybe
Could you
2.
imagine that QB room?
No, Aaron Rodgers wouldn't
oh my
be
God.
there.
Aaron Rodgers and Shedeur.
Just making him do ayahuasca with Shedeur.
That'd be the most legendary QB room.
That would be insane. That would actually be an amazing Hard Knocks, like in season.
Jesus
Oh,
Christ.
Aaron
Mike
Rodgers,
Tomlin?
Shedeur, and Mike Tomlin.
Because I feel like Rodgers
George
is at the,
Pickens.
Rodgers at the point now where he just doesn't care.
No shit.
So
No,
Rodgers,
he has
which is
no-
like he's like that, that SpongeBob meme or whatever, where it's like he's sitting in a classroom and the whole place is on fire. Like I feel like that's like Rodgers right now.
Yeah.
And then like Pickens and Shedeur would
Oh my
just
God.
be lethal.
And DK.
Well, DK is like an in-game.
We'd be the Pistons of
crash
basketball.
Yeah.
It's fact.
I'm about it. And we're going to talk all about the other teams. And, specifically, I'm definitely going to bring up the Steelers in our next episode. But let us know in the comments what you think about Shedeur.
Shedeur!
We did everyone's saying no one called this in media. But I want you to know, Dejan Hours called it first with Mr. Michael Youn
I called
himself.
it.
Like we
months
I
and
called
months
it.
and months ago.
Oh, yeah.
So
That's crazy.
shout out Mike. Drop a subscribe if you're new
NFL
here.
President of the Hate
Yeah,
Club.
NFL specialist, absolute sharpshooter in Mr.
President of
Yoon.
the Hate Club.
We'll see you on the next one.